about 4 years ago, 3 years ago even, 3. I remember when I did my Japanese promo for my last record. I was already working on this record then because I was halfway through my last record, Chasing Yesterday, and I got together with David Holmes and we started to work then, and then we worked on it in between tours and things. So when I started Chasing Yesterday, I did some demos for all the tracks. And I wanted to get a producer to come and help me to finish it off. And I went to David Holmes and I played him the tracks, and he said, excuse me, he listened to these tracks and he said, well, they already sound finished. So why don't you just finish them off yourself? And I said, well, but I really want to work with you. And he said, well, why don't we make just a fresh record? And I said, oh, okay. So I kind of went back and worked a bit on Chasing Yesterday, and then I had a break of, I don't know, a few weeks. And I said, what are we going to do then? And he said, if you just come to my house in Belfast, and I said, but I haven't got any more songs. And he said, you don't need any songs. If you just come to my house, bring a guitar and a bag of effects pedals, and we'll work it out when we get there. And I was kind of going, oh, I'm not sure about this, because I don't really work that way. So the first night we got there, we talked about music, and we played some records, and he was saying, what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And I was saying, it's great, I like it. And he said, you should make music like this. And I was like, great. And so the next day went back, and he made up little loops of different records that we'd heard the previous night. And then we just started jamming and did some backing tracks. And then I went away on tour and wrote some words, and then came back. It was 6 months later and sang a bit. And then he did a bit work on it while I was away. And then it just kind of came from there, really. I had no idea what was going on at all, even to the point when it was finished. I heard it and thought, wow, it's amazing, because every time I've been in the studio, I've had a song which I've written 6 months before, and I know what I want it to sound like, and I know what it's about, and I have a vision, and I aim for it, and sometimes you get there and sometimes you don't. With this, I didn't know what was going on, because I'd write some music or I'd write some words, and then we'd pick it up 6 months later and David would have done some work on it and it would sound completely different. And I'd be like scratching my head thinking, what is this record going to sound like? But within that framework, most of my songs, anyway, tend to be about the universal truths of love and happiness and sadness and joy and melancholy and relationships and growing older and being young. So within that, I would always tend to write songs like that anyway. So, but on this record, there's a couple of things where, they're a bit kind of darker and a bit more cynical. There's a track on it called Be Careful What You Wish For, where it was just 2 notes on a guitar. And David loved it. And he said, we should persevere with this. And I was like, it doesn't really inspire me to write anything. And he said, just write like Bob Dylan used to write, just write. And I wrote so many verses, hundreds and hundreds of verses, and we just picked the best ones. And he was very good at saying, I would write something and I'd sing it, and he'd say, yeah, it's good, but I've heard you do that 1,000 times before, so try something different. And for a long time, making the record, I didn't know what different was. I was thinking, well, this is what I've done all my life. I don't really know what he's talking about. And then at some point, it just clicked, you know, and I don't know, it all just came together one after the other, you know. I'm not sure what song it was that turned it around, but I guess I had to get used to the way that he worked. And instead of me trying to make him understand what I do, it was me kind of going to him more, you know what I mean? More going towards the way he worked. And because I'd already made a record anyway, I didn't have anything to lose, because I'd already made this other record and I was about to go out on tour. So I was like, well, if it doesn't work, fuck it, you know, I don't care. Well, different producers work in different ways. Now, I've had producers who will say, bring me the songs, and you play the songs, and then you work on. David wants no music at all, and just to work on it together. So it's more of a, even though I wrote all the songs, it was more of a collaboration in style, really. Is that the right way to put it? I think stylistically, he suggested a starting point. Maybe it would be a drum loop of which I would never come up with. He would say, right, well, this is going to be the song. And I'd say, fine, okay. And in that respect, I learned a lot, because I never thought I'd be able to do it. Just to go into a studio with no music and just sit there and make it up on the spot. And it was very liberating. And I'm so pleased that I did it, you know, because now I would have no fear doing it now at all, you know. And, you know, in amongst all that, you've got to get to the where we had 11 tracks for an album, we must have recorded 50 pieces of music. So you've got to be willing to think everything that you do, maybe a tiny % of it is you're only going to use. So a lot of stuff you're going to work on it and work on it for hours, and then just both go, nah, and then move on to something else. So I've got at home CDs of hours of just noodling and jamming and fucking around. So if I could explain it, on this album, if we recorded this much amount of music, we only used about this much. I mean, I'm a fan of his. I've liked all his records, and I like, you know, he's a great DJ. I'd never met him, but I'd got his records, and I was doing a gig in the Isle of Man with Primal Scream, and he was with them, and they were in my dressing room. We were having a drink, and he introduced himself, and I was like, wow, God, fucking hell, David Holmes. I knew quite a lot about his music, and I just, when it came to doing Chasing Yesterday, I thought, oh, he was cool, man, you know what I mean? And maybe he could work on some of this record and try something different. And of course, out of that came this record, so. No drama at all. I mean, it took a long time. It took a long time to do it. But we said to each other quite early on, we're not going to put anything out that both of us are not completely happy with, which David thinks are fucking amazing. And I'm like, nah. And he's going, you're fucking mental. These songs are amazing. And I'm like, nah, I don't know, you know. And so they never came up, so they never got finished, you know. So I guess we made a pact very early on and stuck to it. So there's a track on the album called The Man Who Built the Moon. And the chorus, I wrote 7 different choruses for it. The first one I wrote was amazing. And he went, try another one. So I did another one, and then another one. And they were all incredible, but they were all getting steadily better and better and better until they got to the 8th one. And he said, that's it. And I was like, he's right, you know. And maybe it takes somebody, because I'm like 50, this is true, I am actually 50 years old. Maybe it takes somebody to say, the older that you get, try something different, because you kind of fall into just the things that you always do, and you kind of maybe haven't got the patience or the time or the energy to try different things. So in that sense, it was inspired decision to work with him, you know what I mean? Because he tried. I mean, when people hear the record, okay, they're going to be fucking blown away, because it doesn't even sound like me, some of it. But when you think about it, it does actually sound like me, you know what I mean? It's kind of, it's a real great moment that I'm in, I think. On every single record I've ever made, I play acoustic guitar. Every single one, on every single track. There's no acoustic guitar on this record. I think there's on one track, and Johnny Marr played it. I didn't play it at all. And scope to do whatever he wanted, you know. I only ever work from midday till 6 p.m. and then I go home. So on all my records, at 6 p.m. the studio closes and that's it, and everybody goes home. Whereas he would stay till 4 o'clock in the morning, kind of, you know, trying different things on computer and all that. And I'd come in the next day and he'd be like, wow, look, check this out, what do you think of this? And some days you'd get in and go, no, I don't like it. Then you'd have to start again. But most days I'd get in and go, fucking hell, that's incredible. And then it would make me think that the stuff that I'd written is not going to work now, so maybe I've got to go back and try something else. So it was always evolving and moving up a level, each song. And we never concentrated on one song. Each day was working on 5 different songs a day, you know. And it was, it was kind of like a whirlwind of being creative, and it was incredible. And I think this is the first record I've ever, it's the first record for a long time that I've played all the guitars on. Apart from one track which Johnny Marr plays on, all the guitars that you hear is me. So usually when my first 2 solo albums, friends would play, or, you know, whoever else is in the band at the time. But this one I played all the guitars on it. So. Because he was getting session musicians in, and I was saying, who's going to play guitar? And he said, well, you're going to play the fucking guitar, you're a guitarist. And I was like, okay. I could mean, I'm not going to tell you what it means. So it could mean who built the moon, right? But the moon could also be a ship called the moon, and the man who built the moon could be a shipbuilder. So you make your own mind up. I know what it means, but I'm not telling you. Paul Weller plays on a track, Johnny Marr. There's a guy who plays the bass. I've never even met him. I've never even fucking met him. We would do a track, send it to him, he lives in Los Angeles, overnight. We would go to bed and wake up the next morning, he would send it back over the internet, like amazing bass lines. His name's Jason Falconer, he's a fucking genius. I still have never shook hands with him yet, and yet he plays bass on all the records. So he plays bass. Jeremy Stacey, my ex-drummer, he plays some drums. There's some amazing backing singers. I can't remember all their names. There's so many musicians on the record. There must be maybe 30, 40 musicians on the record. Yeah. It costs a lot of fucking money, but it sounds good. I did some of it in Belfast, some of it in a place called The Pool in London, not far from here actually, which is an old swimming pool, which is converted into a studio. And then I did some of it in a place called Hoxo, Hoxo, which is a studio that used to belong to Edwyn Collins. And then I did some of it in a place called Strange Ways, where I made Chasing Yesterday. So the first track, that happened on the last day, the very, very last day. It wasn't even supposed to be on the record. It was just an idea that we had that never went anywhere. And on the last day, David knew this girl called Audrey Bagwidi, a French girl from, she's from Africa somewhere, Gabon or somewhere, I can't fucking remember. She's a beautiful girl. And David had got her in to do a session, and I was saying to David, what is she going to do? And he said, I don't know. And I said, what track's she going to sing on? And he said she's going to sing on the opening track, which is Fort Knox, and another track called Be Careful What You Wish For. So she's in one room, we're in another, and she just started singing. No words, just kind of like, ethereal. And honestly, I was like, fuck off. It was amazing. I was like, we both looked at each other and just went, oh, wow. And she was incredible. And then Charlotte, who did the French bit in It's a Beautiful World, there was a whole section. So we were kind of debating what that section should be. And I said, why don't we get some spoken word? And then we kicked that idea around for a bit. And then I came up with the idea it should be French. I don't know why. I don't know why French. It just sounded like it would be a good idea. And we sent the track to this girl, Charlotte. And then she came and did this thing, and we were kind of like, fuck. And then when we read what she'd said in English, we were like, wow. It's really incredible, like moving. And all the people that kind of played on the record, all the girls who sang backing vocals, and all the guys that played percussion and the brass section and the bass players and all that, they were all fucking brilliant musicians. And we gave them no brief. It was just like, this is the track, just play something. And all what they played were just incredible. And Johnny Marr was just like, fuck. Again, kind of, because he's my mate, and I'm like, come and play on this track. And he's like, what do you want me to play? And I'm like, I don't know. He pulls out his mouth organ and plays that, and I'm just like, wow. Unbelievable, Real privilege to have been around all those creative people, and all them working on my music was just amazing. Because my songs, like I said at the top of the interview, pretty much deal in universal truths, the news doesn't impact on what I do. It makes me feel fucking sad, when I see terrorist attacks in Paris and Manchester and North Korea firing fucking missiles over Japan and all that shit. That makes me sad. But I wouldn't want to write about it. Other people do, and that's great. That's not really what I do. But if anything, the way the world is at the minute, with the terrorism and the hate, I think it's really important to put more music into the world, and for that music to contain some kind of joy. And I think the most difficult thing to do as a songwriter is to write anything that's joyous. And I think if you write songs that are joyous, it's like defiant in the world, People now write songs, well, this is what I feel anyway, about loss and pain and darkness and angst. To be a songwriter that writes songs about joy it's a fucking defiant thing, you know what I mean? In the face of all this shit and hate, if you can still say, it's a beautiful world, what the fuck? It's kind of defiant message, I think. That was the first track that we did on the album. And the minute that I heard the tin whistle, the riff, I knew that was going to be the first single. I honestly think it's one of the best things I've ever written. It's the most simple song which contains the most joy I've ever written. And, It's about the beauty of women and how wonderful women are, and when you meet, those wonderful women. I met mine, and there you go. But I still write about it. I've got about fucking 100 songs out of meeting that fucking woman, my wife. I can tell you that it was a joy to work on it. It took quite a long time to write and to get right, but it's hands down fucking what a tune, killer tune, amazing. All the great songs have two meanings, all of them. But you don't want more than two. I think that's confusing then if you have like 3 or 4. Okay, we live in a world which is full of paradoxes. Okay, the planet is fucking beautiful. The oceans are amazing. Animals are beautiful. Fucking women are beautiful. Music is great. But yet we have ISIS, pigs like ISIS, and fucking idiots like Donald Trump. So the world is a kind of the world is very contradictory. You know what I mean? And I guess that's what I was trying to sum up in the song. I think that's what I was trying to do anyway.
How did you feel?
I was speechless, and but again, it's kind of tinged with sadness because I'd rather that song not have become what it is. If the terrorist thing had never happened, it would still be like just what it was, And now it's become this song of maybe sorrow and sadness and defiance. And all of us rather wish that the thing had never happened at all, do you know what I mean? But I was sat at home watching the news one day and around the terrorist bomb in Manchester, when the girl in the crowd just started singing it and then everybody started singing it. I was fucking watching the telly when that happened. And it's one of the most beautiful things I ever seen. It really kind of, if I didn't know it already about how music actually does bring people together, then I know it now that song in that moment bonded all those people together, and they all spontaneously, well, it's incredible everybody knows the words anyway, right? All the strangers. But it's also incredible that everybody was in the moment with that girl singing the song and what it means. And what does it mean? It's a brilliant, it's an amazing thing. I don't really know how to sum it up to you, really. I couldn't tell you. I think where I'm at now with this album, I genuinely mean this, I think I've arrived at a peak. If I can make an album that's better than this one, that would be a fucking achievement. Because I think now that I am so good that I might have to retire. It's not going to get any better than this. I'm so fucking handsome now, right? I feel so good that I don't know really what to do after this. I don't know.
Please don't retire.
But there's not, what else can I do? It's boring being this brilliant. I get out of bed every day and I'm fucking in shock at how good I am. I'm eating breakfast and my wife says, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, I can't believe how brilliant I am. So my band, There's going to be 10 people in my band. 10 people. I don't know yet because I haven't started to rehearse it, so I don't know what it's going to look like. But I'm going to play six songs off the new record. And then probably all the singles off the other ones and some, maybe. I'm going to try this time to play some really obscure Oasis songs that I've never played before. And other than that, I don't know. I just hope it's as good as the last time I went. Because I always enjoy my time in Japan. It's very tiring because of the jet lag and all that kind of thing. But I really look forward to going there. And I couldn't really tell you why. Because it's a fucking long way to go there. And it's a pain in the arse being followed around by fucking everybody just going, sign fucking autographs forever. But all that being said, it's one of my favourite places to go in the world because I can find clothes that fit me. Because look how fucking skinny I am. It's unbelievable. Everywhere I go, I'm kind of, have you got that in an extra small? No. Oh, fucking hell. Have you got this in a small? No. Have you got these shoes in a size 6? No. You know, because Europe is full of fat people. It is. It's full of fatties. And they're taking over the world. And I can't fucking find clothes to fit me. But in Japan, jeans. Fucking loads of jeans. So if anybody's watching, corduroy jeans, waist 29, leg 32, all the colours, Levi's preferably. Or Lee, I don't mind. No Wrangler. Edwin jeans, they're good. So I look forward to the shopping and the food. I love Japanese food.